Hello, everyone, to the very first rendition of the League NBA podcast. My name is Roberto, and I'm your host, along with.
Hi, my name is Carlos. I will also be your host.
So, first episode, we should probably explain a little bit about what the show will be. Essentially, the show is two fans, avid fans, one of esports, in this case, League of Legends, and another one of the NBA. And the goal of the show will, essentially be to try to get the other person to become a fan of the other person's respective sport. Um, Before we continue, uh, we should talk about our fandoms. So I'm Roberto, and I have been a League of Legends esports fan since 2012. So season two for you League of Legends fans, and I also watched other esports on the side. CS:GO, Overwatch, um, Dota internationals, and I'll even dabble in some Fortnite. Um, that's pretty much my fandom.
Hi, I'm Carlos again, and yeah, I'm really into NBA. I've been a really big NBA fan ever since I was in high school. I'm also a really big baseball, soccer, NFL fan, but my number one sport has always been basketball. My favorite player, obviously, was Kobe Bryant. So when I was a little kid, I was always like the main guy I looked up to. Um, and yeah, I'm excited for this podcast because um, I really don't know that much about League. I know about esports. I know a lot about why people stream and why people are so invested in it, but I don't know like the whole generics and the whole details about it. So hopefully by the end of this podcast, I'll really become informed and hopefully a fan of one of the teams.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, So something that most NBA fans won't know, but league fans probably know, is how connected our leagues actually are. In the league world, at least in the esports scene, NBA references are made every day, dude. Like people just talk about NBA like comparisons or what's the word here? Oh, sorry, I'm blanking. What do you call
Analogies?
analogies? Yeah, analogies.
Yeah.
Like today I was into the show and then the name Bill Russell came up and they were talking about how his number of championships were not as strong as Michael Jordan's six championships. And I was just there like, I don't fucking know who Bill Russell is, but I'm sure you do, and I'm sure he's probably like a big name to you. But people in the league world are always just like comparing themselves to the NBA. I think even when the professional League of Legends scene got started, they brought in producers from the NBA scene to try to help run the League of Legends scene, which is why a lot of similarities are made. Um, I There's a lot of teams actually that there are a few teams actually that have stakes in the league. The Golden State Warriors, the Cavs have stake in one of the teams. The Rockets, the Houston Rockets had a team, but then they sold because they were kind of dog shit. But Madison Square Garden, that's a basketball stadium, right?
Yeah, Madison Square Garden, one of the premier, most famous basketball arenas in the world.
Yeah, I know that their group owns one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
For the most part, NBA teams, and just there's just I feel like league fans like love making comparisons with league, and I mean with NBA. Sorry, I know we're talking about this before we start recording, but Gordon Hayward, it was kind of used as like a golden child by the league. I don't know if he's good at basketball or not. I know he talks about league. I don't know what you think about him.
Gordon Hayward. Well, first of all, props to him. He manages to be able to play League of Legends and also become one of the most overpaid NBA players in the entire league.
Okay.
He got. Let me tell you this before we start.
Okay.
But he got paid $120 million from the Charlotte Hornets, which is Michael Jordan owns the team. So Michael Jordan paid him all that money
Wow.
so he could participate and play in the league. Turns out Gordon Hayward hasn't been a really good NBA player since 2016. He just got, oh, I don't know why he got paid all that money, which, okay, whatever, sure, let's go with it. And another reason I heard about League before was through Rick Fox. Rick Fox, former Laker,
Mhm.
he whenever he does interviews, he talks about his investments in League
Yeah.
and how he's trying to grow the brand. So I don't know if you could talk about him more, Roberto, and how he has grown the league or not.
So Rick Fox was honestly, the league scene was really blessed to have Rick Fox for the time it did. He's still kind of involved to a very limited extent. He actually went on TV with some of our analysts and casters, and he was a great face to have, because he's recognized as a face. He gave credibility and to our league and how important it is and how valuable it actually is. He owned the team for a little while. The team's name was Echo Fox, and I believe he got into league because his younger son played league, and he was trying to find a way to connect with him, and he looked into it. He thought it was a good investment, made his own team. For the most part, his team was pretty bad, but it's just hard being someone from the NBA coming into the league because you're going against people that some of these people that own teams were actually players. They know exactly how, who's good, who's not, because I could go watch NBA games and I probably wouldn't be able to tell you anyone besides like LeBron, and I wouldn't be able to make a good team, And if I was, anyway, so Rick Fox had a team, but there was drama. So he had to sell his team. I think one of his CFOs or someone on his board, someone leaked an email of him calling Rick Fox the N-word. And there was a bunch of drama. The Riot, which is the company that owns League of Legends, or at least runs League of Legends, wanted that guy to be off the board of directors, I believe. And he wouldn't sell. Eventually, they had to sell their slot, and unfortunately, Rick Fox is not really a part of the league. But I know he was a blessing to have. He streamed for a bit. He was pretty bad at the game, but he was very, very charismatic, very charming, and I'm personally very thankful for him.
Yeah, I know, and just by the way he was passionate about it, I could tell he wanted the sport to grow immensely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said earlier about the Houston team, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Houston team, their owners are shit right now in the league, right?
Well,
Well,
they sold the team because they were bad.
They sold the team because they're bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so not quite the same. The guy in the NBA, he doesn't want to sell. Timothy Fertitta, I believe, is the name of the owner of the NBA. He doesn't really want to sell a team, but he wants to build a team up. So we'll talk about that more in other episodes. But for right now, we just want to get our introductions out of the way. In other episodes, we'll be doing themes. So talk about things we like about our leagues. Talk about teams we hate. Talk about the dynasty teams per se. What else will we be talking about, Roberto?
I mean, there's a lot. No, so there's a topics that me and Carlos want to get to. I think there's a lot of. I want to hear more about, because another reason why I kind of wanted to start this podcast is, like the League of Legends esports scene is finally kind of getting to this more mature point. Where we're past the point where players are getting paid in keyboards and mouse pads. People are actually getting paid millions of dollars to play this game every year. You talked about Gordon Hayward stealing paychecks. There's a lot of players that people say are stealing paychecks in the scene here. Players are getting paid $2 million a year. It's like, it's crazy. And, but, we could talk about, those topics that we could talk about, like, the teams we hate. We can rank top players and teams of all time. We can talk about coaching stuff. We can talk about developmental years. We can talk about how, how team chemistry, maybe trumps over, stardom, and maybe the path to become a pro in both, leagues. And because I honestly, I hear the phrase draft pick all the time, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. We kind of have a draft pick in our system too, but it doesn't mean much compared to. I've heard the NBA draft pick is like a whole ass show, right?
Yeah, it's like a 3-hour long show where NBA teams get to choose, get to draft actually college players after they're done with the 1 year in college, or they get to draft players from overseas. So mainly from Europe is where they get their talent.
Oh wow! I mean, that's interesting. I was under the impression that the NBA, that all the talent was in America, because I hear about the Olympics and how the U.S. always just like dumps on everyone. And besides like Spain, right? I think Spain's like the only other country that's like somewhat decent. I think from what I've heard. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, you can argue that actually that 2 of our top 5 players in the NBA are from other countries. So Luka Doncic, he's from Croatia. I mean Slovenia. And number are people who are saying Giannis Antetokounmpo. He is from Greece, and he just won back-to-back MVPs. So we're seeing the league grow in
over
other countries as
over
well.
LeBron.
Over LeBron, yeah.
Oh
And we'll
wow.
get to see. I'm going to give my piece about
Okay.
why that wasn't
Okay.
the
Cool.
case. But
Okay.
yeah, the
Yeah.
league is really growing now.
Because from the outside, dude, I figure LeBron wins everything. Like I just know LeBron wins everything, and he's like a beast, you know. And I heard he's bad at defense. He doesn't pass the
Uh-huh.
ball. I think. Um, or maybe that was Kobe. I don't remember much about the the game, but yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of good topics. Like the import topic fascinates me because I didn't think you guys the NBA need imports, but like I'll tell you this much: like North America is probably the fourth or fifth best region in the world, and we have probably the most imports out of everyone because we have the one of the smaller player bases, and we could talk about this. It's like a pretty interesting topic on its own. But
Uh-huh.
today, you know, um, before we get into today's topic, which is we want to talk about how our leagues handle COVID. Can you talk a bit about how maybe a regular season, not COVID season, how a regular season would usually look like? Maybe talk about preseason playoffs, what the month spans, like the amount of
Yeah.
games and stuff.
Yeah. So usually, the preseason would start around early October. So players would report to camps, usually in their home cities, and begin getting to know their players, getting to know their teammates. Because the draft just took place in a normal year. The draft would have taken place in June, and players would have had from June all the way to October to sign a team or to get traded to a team. So around 3 months of pretty much vacation or players resting or players getting signed to teams. And then around late or to the middle to late October is when the season actually starts. And in a typical season, it's an 82 game season where every team plays each other twice. So there's 30 teams. Every team plays each other twice. And if you're in the Western Conference, you play your Western Conference opponents 3 to 4 times. And if you're in the Eastern Conference, you play your opponents 3 to 4 times. And usually the schedule is 82 games per season. The season would end around Easter, so
Wait, can I ask you a question
April.
real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry, I lost you. So you said there's 82 games and there's 30 teams and they play each team twice. So
yeah,
wouldn't that be 58 games? Because 29 games, right?
yeah. So I think I misspoke there. So yeah, so they play each other twice.
Mhm.
Every single team gets played twice. But if you are in the Western Conference, you get to play your Western Conference opponents an additional 1 or 2 times.
How come?
So it just to balance the schedule, to make sure that it's not fair for a team from like LA traveling all the way to Toronto, while teams like in Philadelphia and Boston get to are just gonna do that short
Yeah.
travel. So
That's
they're
gonna be
trying to
really yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, they're just trying to balance the schedule a lot. So like in the Pacific Division, for example, like which is the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns, the Golden State Warriors, and the Sacramento Kings. They're all in California/Phoenix, so
Mhm.
it's pretty short distance to travel. So that's why those teams will play each other 4 times a year, as compared to playing the Eastern teams only twice a year. So it will only be 82 game schedule in a regular season.
Okay.
And like I said, playoffs start on in April,
Who makes
and
playoffs?
the playoffs. So there's 30 teams, and there's 15 teams per conference. So out of all the leagues, this is pretty much the only league where the top 8 seeds on each conference can make the playoffs. So 16 out of 30 teams qualify for the playoffs. That's over half of the teams in the league, which is more than baseball. For example, baseball only 10 out of 30 qualify. NFL, I believe, only 12 out of 32 qualify. So NBA, over 50% can make the playoffs. So that's one of the controversies, that too many
You're gonna
teams are making the playoffs.
you're gonna hate League of Legends playoffs then. Go ahead, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, too many teams are making the playoffs. It kind of dilutes, because like when the
Mhm.
number one seed gets to place like the 8 seed, it's
Mhm.
always going to be like a 4 game sweep.
Mhm.
And the way the playoffs are formatted, they're best of 7. So you
Mhm.
have to beat a team 4 times out of 7 in order to advance to the next round. And usually those 1-8 matchups, those two-sided matchups, are
Yeah.
done within 4 or 5 games. So that's kind of the controversy of with the NBA, um, and how they change the playoffs. So playoffs are usually from April all the way to June, June is where the champion is crowned. And everything is best out of 7 games. And obviously the top seeds, they get home court advantage. So if you say you have the best record in the league, you will have 4 out of the 7 games in your own stadium. So so the way that the format is, you get the first 2 games at home, you go 2 games away, 1 game home, 1 game away, and then game 7. Usually, game 7 is a winner go whole game. You get it at your home stadium. So a lot of teams try to jockey for home court advantage and get the best possible seed so they can have home court advantage. And usually, the team with home court ends up winning because of the fans, because the players are comfortable sleeping in their own beds, and the court that they play in. And to add on, usually in the NBA, there's a trade deadline season around March, and that's where teams can like add last minute like pickups or transactions for their team before the playoffs pick up. And that's really a big scene in the NBA where teams try to hopefully get the best players possible. A lot of fans argue online, but in a nutshell, pretty much NBA 82 game season, best of 7 playoffs. And if you get home court advantage, you're in a really good spot.
Okay, and then after the playoff ends, how long do they take a break for usually?
Yeah, so champion is crowned middle of June, right like June 10th or around that time, and then they'll take 3 to 4 month break depending. Because if you're a team who got eliminated like in April, you already had time off from April all the way to October. But if you're a team that was just like had a long playoff run, you will only have like a 3-month break, and then teams you could start signing for teams July 1st. So and once your contract runs out, or if you get cut or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting. I'm surprised to hear about like how it's controversial to have more than half your teams in the playoffs. I have a question for you. How often do teams get reverse swept in the NBA? Like, is that common? Is that common?
So like reverse swept, you saying like upsets?
Yeah, no. So like you said best of 7, right? So let's say someone's up 3-0, and then someone comes back and wins 4 in a row. Does that happen?
Okay. Yeah. So in the NBA, that has never happened. In baseball, that has happened once. Hockey, that's happened. Soccer, that's happened. Basketball is the only sport where there hasn't been a reverse 3-0 sweep, but there has been numerous occasions where a team has come back down from 3-1, and those are where the memes come from. // blew a 3-1 lead, and we had that happen twice in these last playoffs. Where the Utah Jazz blew a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets, and then the Clippers, they blew a 3-1 lead to the same team, the Nuggets. So the Nuggets were getting like this meme, like they're the 3-1 Kings. If you're ahead of them 3-1, you're gonna lose the series. So
that's funny.
That's pretty much like, yeah, there hasn't been ever a 3-0 reverse sweep, but there has been a lot of 3-1s. And yeah, it just shows like how tough it is just to, if you're one of like the lower seeds, how tough it is to pull the upset or to win 4 games in a row against a determined team.
That's so funny. I think in the league community we have a meme that's like, so it's best of 5 usually playoffs, and whenever it's a team that's up 2-0, people will start tweeting out congratulations to the team that's up 2 games and be like, there's no way the other team comes back from this. And it only becomes really funny when they actually lose, because people just blow that tweet up saying like, oh, it's your fault, you jinxed them. But that's pretty interesting. Okay, so for the league scene, the way it works is this is hard to talk about because league is a pretty universal global sport, but I'm going to be talking specifically about the North American region, more specifically about this past year. So there's 2 splits. So if you're familiar with, like, for example, Mexican soccer, which I think you are, it's kind of like that. There's 2 splits. There's like a spring split,
apertura, clausura, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. There's 2 splits. The spring one, for the most part, it doesn't matter people like to meme that it doesn't matter because it doesn't take you to Worlds, but there's just so it's spring split. There's 10 teams. They play 2 round robins, so 18 games total. In spring split, 6 teams go to playoffs, 6 out of the 10. Okay, and it's kind of like double elimination. And first place for spring split goes to this tournament called Mid-Season Invitational. Well, they'll play the top teams from Korea, China, Europe, and various other regions like Australia, Japan, whoever makes it in Vietnam. But the top regions in the world are China and Korea are the top 2. It's highly debated who's number 1 and 2. Europe could technically be 2. I would say, okay, I'm gonna put it this way: China and Korea were top 2 this past year, but Europe's been like top 2 in the past couple of years. So it's hard to say who honestly top 3 is. I would say you could honestly go with either one as being 1, 2, and 3. What's known as North America's 4th, and there's a huge, vast difference between them and us. Mm-hmm. So they go to Mid-Season Invitational, and North America, the best we've ever done is go to finals. We go to finals, but we haven't won. So we've fluked our way in twice to the top 2 at MSI. One year we beat Taiwan, and the other year we beat China, which was a huge win. It's probably the best result we ever gotten. And we won the semifinals, and the finals we got the fastest 3-0 in history against Europe. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. North American fans just get shit on all the time. Anyways, so after that they come back to North America, and they play a summer split. Summer split, same as spring split. 18 games, round robin. However, in summer, top 8 teams go to playoffs.
So out of the 10, 80%.
Yeah, and people meme on it because it's what's the point? But I think right now it's not worth it. But eventually, if there's a team that goes from 8th to top 3, that would be pretty intense. I guess insane. There's gonna be some changes, I heard, this upcoming year, so we're gonna focus on how it just happened. So yeah, top 8. This past year there was no. So everyone gets double elimination except 7th and 8th seed. And so yeah, so you get seeded by how well you did in the regular season. So the 18 teams, you get seeded by that, by your record. So where the advantage comes is when you play. So let's say your first seed against your second seed, for example. Where the advantage comes from is side selection. So believe it or not, in League, so eventually, actually, we totally skipped over this. So the point of League of Legends, for anyone that doesn't know, is to blow the other team's base up. Okay, there's 5 players on each team. How many players on an NBA team? 6?
There's 5 players per team that can play on the court at a certain time.
Oh, so just like League, kind of. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, so League has 5 players on each team, and the goal, there's 3 lanes: top, mid, bot. Bot has 2 players, and there's a jungle which kind of roams the whole map. And the point is to get kills, destroy turrets, get minions, will give you gold. The more gold, the better items. The better items, the easier. You can fight over neutral objectives, which are big. You can call them monsters. They give you power ups, and then you want to destroy the team's nexus or base. So now we got that very basic intro out of the way, which we should have talked about at the beginning. So side selection. So there's blue side, which is the left side, and red side, which is the right side. Believe it or not, statistically speaking, blue side is better by 2% or 3%, I think. And what's good about blue side is that you get first pick. So champ select, you pick your champion, right? So you use champions to be able to fight in what they call Summoner's Rift, which is the map that you play on. And you have any questions, call to stop me at any moment, okay?
Yeah.
So you have coaches on both sides, and then they do 3 bans. They do ban 1, ban 2, ban, so they alternate bans, okay, between both teams. And you ban the overpick powers, okay? Overpick champions, I mean. And then blue side gets to pick the first champion. So if blue side's smart with the way they ban, they could probably pick whatever the strongest champion in the game is at that point. However, after that, red side gets to pick 2 champions. Mm-hmm. So there's strategy to it. Sometimes people don't ban good stuff. That way there's a lot of overpowered stuff left. Sometimes they ban specific picks because some players are known for their signature picks. So it's blue side picks 1, and then red side picks 2. And then blue side picks 2. So it's blue side 1, red side 2 and 3, blue side 4 and 5, red side 6. And then you get to take a glimpse of their composition. And then I think red side bans once, blue side bans twice, and then red side bans again. And then after that, red side picks one, blue side picks twice, and red side picks last pick, which last pick is important because you can get a counter pick. So there's a champion that they pick that it can get dumpster by a specific champion. You can pick that into it. You get a favorable matchup. So that's where strategy comes, and we can talk about strategy at a different time because for me, as a non-NBA watcher, it's very easy to sit here and be like, how hard? I'm sure it's a very physical sport, but it doesn't feel like there's much strategy to it. But I'm sure there is, just like how there is a strategy in league. I'm sure you could talk about strategy for hours. And,
wait, so quick question. So say each team picks 3 champions, right? And say the other team, they can get rid of 2 of their best players, and then they can pick up one of those players they banned, or what?
No, not the players, the champions. Is that what you're asking?
The champions. Yeah, the champions. Yeah. So they could whatever champion that you ban, you can get the other player in another. Can you choose that champion that you banned?
So the ban is specifically for just that one game. So blue side bans 3 champions. Both sides ban 5 champions total. Whatever champions they ban, neither side can pick it.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. So neither side can pick it, and that's very important when it comes because there's players that are known as one-trick ponies, which are players that just play the one champion, like me. And they're not good players because they just play one champion. Good players should be able to play various styles, and various different champions. So, okay, so playoffs happen. Top 3 teams go to the World Championship. And the World Championship, there's a stage called play-in stage. So, in the play-in stage, the weaker seeds of all the regions play in this mini tournament. And then the top 4 teams from this mini tournament that has around 10 to 16 teams get to go to the main stage. The main stage has 16 teams made up of, usually, I think this past year was 4 Chinese teams, 3 Korean teams, 3 European teams, 3 North American teams. I think one from, where was the other one? What was that one team from? It was a minor region team. I'm forgetting right now where they're from. And so we have major regions, minor regions, and we could talk about the different time. But so at the World Championship, and I should probably talk dates, but at the World Championship, there's 4 groups, and each group has 4 teams, and they're kind of seeded. So you have Pool A, which is the top 4 teams, Pool B, which has the next 8 teams, and then Pool C, which is the weakest 4 teams. And then you kind of seed them as someone randomly seeds them. The playoff is top 2 from every group go on to playoffs, and then so the number 1 from, for example, Group A plays against number 2 from Group B, for example. And if you were in the same group, so let's say, because they do a draw, okay, this is all random. There's no reseeding once you make it to the playoffs of Worlds. There's no reseeding. I know it's really complicated, but it's kind of complicated. But there's no reseeding. And the only kind of caveat is that number 2, if you were number 2. Let's say number 1 team from Group A got placed on the left side of the bracket. Number 2 of the same group needs to be placed on the right side. So you can be on the same side of the bracket.
So they don't play each other again. In the group. Yeah.
And then there's no double elimination at Worlds. Oh, sorry. In group stages, the 4 groups, they each play each other twice. So it's a total of 6 games in each group. And it's best of 1s, which people hate. And then in playoffs, it's best of 5s. This past year, it was, I think Korea won again after 2 years not winning. Second place was China. I think third place was probably shared between Europe and the Chinese team. And you get to see there's a lot of strategy, and that was kind of a rough overview of kind of like the league time frame. The spring tournament takes place usually from January to March, with the mid-season invitational taking place in March. They get a small break of maybe the mid-season invitation takes place in April. So they get a break of May, and then in June, they start again with summer. They play till late August, and then in September, Worlds starts. In September till mid-October is when Worlds ends. So they get a 2-month break kind of before they start again. I think, yeah, so a 2-month break. Free agency, which is when you can sign a lot of the players, is November 16th. And you can talk about contract and stuff. I feel like I've kind of rambled on about the format. That was kind of unorganized, so I apologize for that. But if you need any clarification, you can ask me right now.
So what I'm getting from this is it's group stages, and then after group stages, it's knockout round, and then the knockout round, and then those teams. So do they represent their country, or are they representing a different organization?
So they represent their. Okay, so they are organization, and they represent the region. So
the region.
the major regions are China, which is just China, Europe, which is mostly like the United Kingdom plus Britain. I guess now the Brexit happened because like there's Russia. Russia has its own server, and Turkey has its own server. But those countries are European, right? But they have their own region. I think due to like labor laws and stuff. There's Korea, which is just Korea. There's North America, which is mostly Canada and the US, because Mexico is technically part of the Latin American server. There was Oceania, which was Australia, but they actually just lost most of their funding. So now, if you're from Oceania, you're technically a North American player. You can come to play for North America without being an import. Each North American team can only have up to 2 imports, and that's where a lot of controversy kind of happens, because now that there's some rule changes that if you have a green card, you're technically not an import. So some of these players have been here for a while. They're like Korean and European and Chinese. They're now getting their green cards and they're able to not kind of import. So some of these top teams have 3 to 4 imports. I think last year's Team Liquid was literally 4 imports and a North American player. And it's like some people say like it's good because it's good for international competition. Some people hate it because it's like, we're not developing our own talent. And a lot of these imports that come from abroad, most of the time they're past their prime. They're still very good, but they're not at their prime, and people don't want people not at their prime. People joke about coming to North America as a retirement home. So I think it's, interesting because I know like the NBA is like the premier league of the world, right? You guys it's like the top, like it's where all the good players go to play, right? And North America
and you go to Europe to go retire.
Yeah, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So it's so funny how the juxtaposition, if you want to call it that, of how North American, people joke about people coming here to retire, and there's a lot. I feel like it's very interesting stuff. But so essentially, I know I kind of went. So it's pretty much regional pride. I think North America is like the only region with imports, like because I know China is like all Chinese and a few Koreans. Korea is all China. I mean, sorry, Korea is all Korea, and Europe is, I believe Europe's like almost all European, because Europe used to import a lot of people, but then they realized that effective communication was better than having like raw talent with some of the people. And their players are good enough to play. Europe has a huge player base. I think North America has like the smallest player base out of everyone. And that, we can talk about that in a different episode. I think it has to go with culture and how video games aren't as normalized as. I mean, we're getting there as a country and region, but even with different, like 2K and Madden, they're becoming more and more lucrative. But I would say Korea and China. I mean, China is just better because they have so much money and they have like, I think like 10 times their population size in players alone. So that makes them like insane. Like obviously the more players you have, the more likely you are to hit those gem players, right? So like that makes sense. So that's pretty much a gist of what a regular North American season looks like. If you're on the winning team that goes to all the tournaments. So now that we got that out of the way, I think we could talk a bit about how COVID was handled. I want to hear about you first. Like, just tell me how COVID was handled with the NBA. Maybe talk about the impact on the fandom and like how long the break was before you guys started again. Just give me your take on COVID.
Yeah, so funny because like I remember like hearing about COVID like really back like
And
February.
let's not get too political, right?
No. Don't remember wearing masks, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about it way back in February, and teams are talking about, oh, we're not gonna have any reporters in the locker room anymore. We're gonna have players start doing interviews remotely. Like, okay, whatever, but we might. And then like early March, like March 2nd or March 3rd, there was some rumors about like, oh, we're gonna have some games without any fans or limited fans even, and people are freaking out like, no, wait, NBA is nothing without like the fan experience in the arena, and people are freaking out like, no, we can't do that. And then March 11th happened, which March 11th was one of the days I'll never forget where I was, because March 11th is the day that Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, he's one of like top 30 like best NBA players in the NBA right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think he tested positive for coronavirus, and people were freaking out because remember this was early March. People did not know have any idea about like what the virus is going to do or how it's going to affect people.
I have a question.
So people were
Is that the guy that rubbed his hands over the microphone?
Yeah, that was that guy who rubbing his hands over the microphone. We didn't call it a big deal.
Yeah.
And he was coughing on his teammates too as like a joke.
Oh God.
And then his teammates ended up testing positive.
Okay.
And then people were freaking out. There were still fans in the arena. So this was happening. Like fans were still in the arena. Everything was like still semi-normal. And then luckily they got it during they got the results that they were positive during pregame. So they canceled the game, and all the fans had to leave the arena. The fans were freaking out because the last time that an NBA game was canceled was due to terrorism, and when JFK got assassinated. So it must have been like a really big deal that NBA games are getting canceled. It must be like, oh shoot, something big must have happened. So then they got together. They canceled the rest of the games up until the end of March. So people are like, okay, it'll resume in April. We'll be back in April just in time for playoffs. We'll just cut it off because at that time they only had, I believe, 60 games completed out of the 82. So by March we pretty much know who the top 8 seeds are going to be for the Western and the Eastern Conference. So the last 20 games are just usually for teams to get prepped up, get rest, or to potentially get higher seeds if they choose to. So people just thought, okay, we'll resume in April, or worst case scenario, May. Worst case scenario, we'll go back in May.
Okay.
Well, then we saw how this country obviously handled COVID, and we saw that it was gonna be a while until we returned. Many people feared that the season was gonna get canceled completely. So that means doesn't matter if you have the best record or the worst record or not, no playoffs for anybody. So people were like, "Oh no, this is like freaking out," because like NBA was the first league out of all sports in the United States to postpone its league. So once NBA canceled their games, you had baseball follow suit. You had MLS, college basketball soon the next day started canceling their games. So like NBA was pretty much the leader and I give the commissioner Adam Silver a lot of credit on this because before they canceled their games, many people did not take it that seriously. And then and that was that day where Tom Hanks was tested positive, where you saw like the numbers started going up significantly. So that was pretty much a wake up call for people and the beginning of lockdown, where you had people start self-isolating and just wondering when the league was going to head. And then we didn't get any update about the league resuming until early June, and at this point, they talked about having a bubble where the top 20 teams, so the top 10 seeds of each conference, would resume and finish out their last remaining games.
Wait, so they just cut the bottom 10 teams out?
Yeah, so if you were like a really bad team, like the Chicago Bulls or like the
what? Wait, the Bulls are bad? Aren't they like iconic?
The Bulls used to be iconic, but not anymore.
Dude,
Are
they Michael Jordan's team? Or they used to be?
They used to be. Yeah, so if we were like a really bad team,
that's so funny,
like the Golden State Warriors last year were like the worst team in the NBA.
Wait, really? I thought they were like super good.
No, not last year. So
so they got cut off.
Not last year.
So for the COVID bubble, they were.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So only the top 20 teams out of each conference got to participate. So obviously by that point, like the number 1 seeds, the Lakers and the Milwaukee Bucks, they already got the number 1 seed no matter what. So they saw the bubble as a need to like to rest their players or get them back in shape, because it was at this point they resumed basketball games July 29th.
Mm-hmm.
So it was already 4.5 months
Wow.
of not playing any
Mm-hmm.
basketball. There were some players who didn't even have hoops or equipment in their own homes. So a lot of players came into the season out of shape. A lot of them felt uncomfortable because they had families who had respiratory illnesses. One of the players, he lost his mother to COVID, so he didn't participate. So we saw a lot of player. It was kind of 50-50 at first. Like, do we want to resume this in the bubble or not, or do you want to resume this and finish the season and declare a champion? Um, so the bubble was settled in Orlando, Florida. So like by Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
there's like a complex where the players would be at, and there the teams would be put into hotels. So they would first go into the hotels by themselves. So there's no families allowed, no close friends, just the players and the coaching staffs, and that's it. So they had to go to a hotel room, isolate for 2 weeks. So they reported like in early July, isolate for 2 weeks, and then after they tested negative after those first 2 weeks of isolation, then they began practicing and resuming the season. So that was funny the way it worked out because the NBA had three different hotels for the league. So there was a really fancy hotel that had like amenities and fancy restaurants. There was like a okay hotel, and then like it was like whatever hotel. And they put like the really good teams in the best hotels,
That's so funny.
and the really crappy teams like towards like the whatever hotels. And then pretty much like I guess to award like the best teams because there wasn't going to be any home court advantage throughout the season,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the resume season because there's not going to be any fans.
Mm-hmm.
So no everybody's on equal playing field on a neutral ground. So
Interesting.
it kind of sucks because I'm a Laker fan. We
Yeah.
had the number one seed. We were gonna have all these games at Staples Center with all the diehard LA fans
Mm-hmm.
yelling and screaming, and especially after Kobe passed away, it was like oh people were gonna show out
Mm-hmm.
and for the city, but it was just quiet. The games resumed and it felt like they were playing like in an empty high school gym. You can hear the players talking. You can hear
I have a question.
um yeah.
Would you prefer that they have like a fake audience track? Because I know some sports have like
Yeah, they did have what's it called? They did have like audio of the fans in the background, which at first I was like, "What? This is so weird." But then like you get used to it too because it you can't have it too silent, otherwise it feels weird. So there was background noise, and then eventually during the broadcast they added like webcams where people were zooming in and
that's sick.
cheering for their team. So like in the background you saw people with videos cheering for their team, um, and that was cool too. And the way that the arenas worked, the music that they were using was like the music that they used during the regular home games and like
Mm-hmm.
the cheering and all that. So it tried to mimic as best as possible, but obviously it wasn't the same thing. Um, anything else to add about here? Yeah, so players they couldn't have any family or friends over until they advanced to at least like the second or the third rounds. So it was really a lot of players were saying that they had like mental health issues just because they were just by themselves this
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
time
yeah.
and they couldn't really talk to anybody else except for like their teammates. And just a lot of the players they had families back home and
Mm-hmm.
it was just really tough just being away from their kids and their loved ones for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. But the way that the bubble worked, I thought it was a success. There was zero positive cases throughout the whole bubble. So the way that they tested every single day, the way they did contact tracing, and the way they did the self isolating at the very beginning, um, turns out that the way it had zero positive cases and no one had to get suspended or no one had to get withheld except for one guy who he's from the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
He he brought a girl over to his hotel room and which you can't do because you're supposed to be by yourself. He got caught and he got suspended for the rest of the playoffs. So that was
Oh,
pretty funny.
did the team get hurt by that or no? Was he
he,
good?
he was like an all right like role player, but
Mhm.
like he was like their sixth best player. But like they were playing like the Lakers at the time, and the
Yeah.
Lakers were really like beating them. So
Mhm.
I don't think it would have made a difference. I don't know. I'm biased,
Do you
but
think he was just like, oh, this game's over anyways?
yeah, he pretty much like he's gonna go home anyways, and he just
Interesting.
felt like yeah, you know how
Yeah, yeah.
that's impulses took over, I
Mhm.
guess.
So I have a question. Um, did anything due to the bubble? Did any players overperform, underperform because like
Uh,
maybe the fans not being there made it easy for them to perform?
yeah, so we have two cases. Like players are saying two things. So one of the guys, Damian Lillard, he's from the Portland Trailblazers. He said on a podcast yesterday that he felt that it was a lot easier for him to participate in the bubble. It was like a lot of players were like shooting like way above their 3 point statistics. A lot of teams are overperforming. And what really mattered during the bubble is having team chemistry. So just making sure that you got along with your teammates, and because you're with them for a very long time.
Mhm.
So you saw a lot of the heavy favorites like get upset really easily during the bubble. So the Milwaukee Bucks, they had the best record in the NBA. They got upset in 5 games against the Miami Heat, beat them, and the Bucks had the best player. They had the MVP. They had the defensive player of the year. They had the coach of the year, and they still got upset by the Heat in 5 games because, again, the Milwaukee Bucks didn't have home court advantage. So it was really easy for an underdog team to
Mhm.
just beat them in 5 games. And if you're the underdog, you have this is pretty much a perfect scenario. Like, oh, okay, I don't have to go to opposing fans booing me and
Mhm.
cheering against me. This is cool. I just get to play basketball,
Yeah.
and so a lot of teams were, I think, overperforming. And what I think what made this really hard is you had another example, the Clippers. The Clippers were supposed to be the team that faced the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and the Clippers ended up getting upset in the second round because they didn't have that team chemistry going. Usually, when they played, um, they were always scowling, or their body language was off or something, and that's really bad because that carries over throughout the next day and through practice. Um, and you see how players were really affected by that. So I think that though it was hard, players did players did overperform. Players did shoot above um, their weight class, but it was one of the toughest championships because you had no home fans. You didn't get to see your family. You didn't get to sleep in your own bed, and you were just mentally drained every single
Mhm.
day just participating in it. And
Yeah.
in addition, during this time, there was a lot of social unrest going on in the United
Mhm.
States with the
Mm.
protests,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of players they really felt upset that they couldn't leave the bubble and go join the protests because
Mhm.
once you leave the
Yeah,
bubble,
yeah.
you pretty much can't come back.
Dang.
So a lot of players really felt passionate about
Mhm.
the protests. So what the players did, this happened like randomly, like during a playoff series. The players they walked out. They walked out of the game and they said, "We're not gonna play in this playoff game until these issues get addressed." So so we had the Milwaukee Bucks walk out, the Lakers, the Clippers. Like a lot of teams are saying, "We're gonna cancel the NBA playoffs unless something is done about social justice." So one thing about the bubble is it brought everybody together. So everyone was co in a coalition, pretty much to
Mhm.
bring about change. And the players they had they had the advantage over the owners because the owners need the players
Yeah.
to play these games in order to
Mhm.
generate revenue. And if they don't play, then especially during the playoffs,
Yeah.
owners are screwed. So the players they had meetings and they were talking to other leaders. They talked to President Obama on ways that they could um, come back and play the playoffs and also generate awareness for social justice, for Black Lives Matter, for voting rights. So what ended up happening is the owners agreed to open up their arenas during the election for voting. A lot of players were allowed to wear T-shirts that said Black Lives Matter or another motto that resonated with them. So a lot of people on back of their jerseys during the playoffs had Black Lives Matter, um, hear her voice, say her name. So a lot of allusions to what is going on in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and the players also were donating a lot of money to social causes because they all wish they would be back. Because this was happening like in late August. I mean, July and August, where everything was really picking up in this world, in this country. I mean, so yeah, the bubble brought everybody together, and you saw just like yeah, it was just a drain on players. It was mentally draining,
Mm.
and I think this is why like this championship that the Lakers just won, especially with the loss of Kobe,
Yeah.
through COVID, canceling their season, and through all the social justice issues that LeBron is especially a part of through
Mm.
his voting campaign. It was very very well earned, and I'm really proud of the way that the players ended up working out. And then there was zero positive COVID cases too,
Mm-hmm.
so it was really I think a really good successful bubble program.
I have one last question. How long was the bubble? Like for or how many months?
Yeah, so July and it started July 29th, and the NBA Finals concluded around October 11th.
Oh, wow.
So 2.5 months,
That's
and
pretty.
the players too. Like once you made like the third round, you were allowed to bring your family in. You were allowed to have them stay with you. So that was kind of good for the players that they got to see like their
Yeah.
kids and their loved ones.
Yeah.
And then when players are winning the title, it's weird because like when you play each other and you beat the other team, you still see them in the hotel room. It's all like awkward for some players.
Yeah.
And, like it's just there. It's like living in a college dorm pretty
Yeah.
much with a bunch of like competitors.
Wow. Well, that was interesting. I learned a lot actually. Yeah, I didn't really know about some of like the civil unrest and how that would affect the players. That's pretty fascinating. As far as the league side goes, so I actually went to the very last live event they had, like right before they shut everything down. I went because my friend was in town and we had nothing to do, so we just went. And I think the first action they took was like usually okay. So this is gonna sound super corny. So the live events are like I think they sit like around 150 people. I think they're very small events, very intimate. And at the end of the game, you can actually go as a fan and high five the players as they walk off stage. And the first thing they did was like, "Hey, no high fiving, no contact, just in case."
Mhm.
But I think during that week after last live event I went to, everything shut down. So then the commissioner of the league was like, "Okay, no more live events. We're gonna cancel it." So they canceled league for a week in North America at least. But within a week, the advantage esports has is you can play online. So they started playing everything online, and the league continued to just 1 week break. The broadcast had a lot of difficulties because obviously there's technical issues and stuff. But the league continued actually, and North America like was probably one of the few leagues that didn't really miss a beat on things. Um, Other regions like China, obviously, like last year, 2020, actually, mid-season invitational, which is a tournament between spring and summer, got canceled because there was just no way to get everyone together. China canceled most of their spring split. Korea, I think, canceled most of it, but they got online pretty fast too. Europe canceled and they got online pretty fast too. So the season carried on regularly in North America online. There was no live events. Everything was done online. I mean, it was live as in you could watch it, but you couldn't go in person, obviously. Um, some of the controversies that happened were some teams have training facilities, and they would also obviously you would have referees go to the teams and just kind of and they would have like software in the players' computers to make sure there was no cheating. Um, no more cheating. You know, they had like people watching them play. Some teams were able, they have training facilities, and they were able to get their players to go to the training facility and play for the training facility. And some players complain about how that was an unfair advantage because you get to be 5 people in the same room compared to playing from your bedroom. You know, um, some of the theories that people had were that some of the rookies would be able to overperform because there was no live audience, the pressure's a little bit lower. But honestly, I didn't really see anything too drastic. It didn't feel like much changed. If anything, the games felt a little bit more sloppy, maybe because the players were more prone to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, I think the teams that we thought would win ended up winning.
Mhm.
It kind of sucks.
There wasn't any like huge upsets or anything like that.
I mean, I could go into who won and stuff, but I mean, I don't really know if that's the topic right now. But there were upsets. I mean, there's a whole topic I could go into. So the jersey I'm wearing, Cloud9, in spring split, most dominant team ever, just stomped everyone. Summer, they start playing. Something happens. So there's 10 weeks of play, right? Around week 7, I think. Something happens. I don't know what happens. I don't know if teams figure them out or what happened, but they just start losing. They start losing and losing and losing. Playoffs come and people are like, oh, they get it together for playoffs because they still ended up like second or third, I think, at the end of the season because they had done so well at the beginning, but then at the end, like the last third of the season, they just split. They just started losing, and everybody thought they were for sure going to Worlds, and somehow they ended up like not going to Worlds, and it's this huge upset. And like it's a whole topic, honestly. That was probably the biggest upset. And then this team called TSM, they went from they lost in the first round, losers bracket, and they worked their way up and they win the whole thing just to go to Worlds and lose every single game. It was like the most crazy run. Like I didn't think they would win the whole thing, but they did. They and that's a whole different topic because how do I say this? Two of the best, actually, the two best players that are playing North America got together one last time, and they made a run. And if you isolate that run, just North America, it was epic. Like these two, just the goats of North America, get together one last time. They play, they beat everyone from losers bracket up. They go to Worlds, and then just like every year, they shot the bed and they didn't do anything at Worlds. But that's a different topic. And they actually both just retired. So if it wasn't for Worlds, it would have been a great story, actually, just thinking about the way they came back and stuff. But unfortunately, because of how bad they did at Worlds, it kind of left a stain on their career. And that's a whole different topic. But anyway, at Worlds, they were actually able to get Worlds in China in person. They had a bubble in China because at that point, China had a pretty good control over it. Most players went, they had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and they still had a bubble, after the 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This quarantine actually is kind of why people say TSM did bad. I think some of the players did really bad in self-isolation. And I think the players could bring their girlfriends with them on the quarantine. Wait, did they? I think some players did, some players didn't. But some players like took the quarantine and they came out of that quarantine like just super motivated and ready to go. Some players' mental just broke. And I think that's what happened to TSM, which is when they went 0-6 and they just in one of the easier groups and they didn't make it out. And they look like shit. They look so bad. It was crazy. But so the bubble happened in China. There was no positive, cases. Everyone was really, it was successful. I think for the finals, they actually had a live event. Yeah, they had a live event. And it was really sad because the Chinese fans finally get to watch something live just for their team to get stomped by the Korean team. No one was happy this past year besides maybe Korea, honestly. I can't think of any team that probably felt good after that tournament. But overall, it was handled well. But with COVID and stuff, there was a lot of talks, and this kind of what brought up the idea for this podcast was so the team Golden Guardians, which is backed by the Golden State Warriors, they had a really good team. They were probably the 4th best team last year. They almost made it to Worlds, but TSM knocked them out. And everyone likes them because they're a bunch of like young, hungry players. They were gonna run it back with that team, and they were gonna improve their weakest role, a huge upgrade. However, they got their funding pulled. They had to sell their whole team, and now they're playing 5 randos. And they say they're the best. The coach, or I think he's like the scouting manager, said, "We're gonna put together the 5 best players you've never heard of." And at least they're being honest, because every team usually in league is like, "We're gonna win Worlds," and no one takes them seriously. But at least this team's being honest about like they were very transparent. Like, "Hey, we lost our funding, so do you know anything about because I heard NBA teams lost a lot of money because I guess they make a lot of money through ticket sales and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, NBA lost around like $800 million like in gate receipts, and then 400 millions in like in sponsorships and merchandise. So a lot of
Oof.
money was lost.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so I mean, I believe all the teams that are backed by. I think the Golden State Warriors are the ones that back their team like by the hardest. The other teams have diversified their backings. So not everyone got hit as hard, but for sure, Golden Warriors, which kind of sucks, is they used to be a meme team, and they're finally up and coming. People were liking them, and now they had to sell their team. I feel bad for them, honestly, but it is what it is. And yeah, so I mean, I all things considered, COVID didn't really affect the league that much, other than we don't get to see it in person. It kind of sucks because the World was supposed to be North America next year, but they're gonna postpone it until 2022, and they're gonna have it in China again next year. It sucks for me as a North American fan because I really wanted to go see my teams get shit on again.
Yeah, but 2022 though, the vaccine
Yeah.
and everything should be normal by then.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm happy that I got to go to the last live event they had in North America. Like I feel lucky because I kind of went just by accident almost. And let me see something. I think we kind of touched on everything that I kind of want to talk about. I think COVID definitely affected NBA way more than league. I mean, obviously, I feel like league got affected, but definitely not to the degree that you guys did.
I mean, like in both leagues, like we talked about, like both NBA and league, like there was like the mental health aspect about it too,
Yeah.
and just being in isolation for that long, yeah, it does mess with your brain. And
Mhm.
I don't know how, especially if you're like a professional athlete or a professional esports.
Yeah.
Do I call them athlete, or what do I call them? Or
Oh, you can whatever esport athlete, athletes, players. You
yeah,
can say whatever.
yeah, so like you're just used to like certain routine, and then once, especially if you're in isolation, it just messes you up.
Mhm. I don't know if you have any final points you want to touch. Anything, any question, any clarifications, or anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, so just final things. This season NBA will not do a bubble. It'll just teams are gonna play in their normal arenas, so it's gonna be interesting. To see like Lakers playing like an empty Staples Center instead of like
Wait,
an empty hotel.
so traveling teams, how are they going to prevent COVID spread?
Yeah, so like we've seen in like in baseball, NFL, it's inevitable. You're gonna get COVID. People are gonna test positive. If you test positive, you have to isolate for around 10 days. So it's gonna mess up a lot of the standings, mess up a lot of teams. So like especially like if LeBron gets it and Lakers don't have LeBron for 2 weeks, and Lakers are kind of like screwed. But it's gonna, no matter what's gonna mess up the league, mess up the scheduling. Games are going to get canceled. Games are going to get postponed. As of right now, there are 42. I mean, there are 72 games scheduled as compared to 82, and that's obviously going to be hit or miss because games are going to get postponed, as shown by other leagues.
Are teams playing from their own stadiums cheaper than a bubble? Because I heard the bubble was super expensive.
Yeah, the bubble was really expensive, and just I guess just have players just sleep in their own beds, be with their own families, and they're gonna just tell the players, be smart about it, exercise caution.
Wow.
Don't go to strip clubs like James Harden is right now. But yeah, we'll see how that situation develops in Houston.
Hey, the league players get girl drama too. Dude. There was actually there was the second place team at Worlds. One of the I think he's the top laner, the jungler. He he had a girlfriend, and I guess he cheated on her a lot during Worlds, and a bunch of girls are exposing him, so he had to drop out of the All Star tournament because we have an All Star tournament too.
Oh
We can talk
no!
about it later, but
Yeah,
that
it's
was
like an All-Star game. Yeah.
yeah we haven't. So that's kind of what happens, and for the league side moving forward, I think a lot of the other regions are going to do in person because COVID's under control over there in North America. We're probably gonna move still online for a bit. I think the people that are affected the most by this, if I'm being honest, it feels like it's the casters and analysts because I feel like the casters especially they hyped up with the audience. I feel like players kind of benefit from no audience, most of them at least. But casters and analysts, I feel like they really thrive of just the audience energy, and it sucks, because we got some pretty great analysts and casters, and yeah, I don't really have any final topics, so we should probably wrap it up, right? What do you think?
Yeah, and just real quick, yeah, NBA obviously the economic loss hurts the people at the ticket who work in the ticket office, the people who work in the arenas, and the people who work in the restaurants and businesses like right next to those stadiums. So, for example, Staples Center, right by LA Live businesses and restaurants
I heard
really
you.
suffering right now. So, yeah, it's yeah the no fans aspect will probably not affect the players that much, but it does affect the economy, what's going on in each of those cities. So, yeah, we can just wrap it up here and.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions still, but I mean, we should probably find a good starting point. Like, I want to talk salaries too. Like, I heard you said Gordon gets paid 100 million or
Yeah,
something.
we have a lot more things to discuss in the upcoming episodes.
That's great. I think the highest paid League of Legends player is probably like 3 to 4 mil, which is still a shit ton of money. But 100 mil, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, people always talk about like the way people get paid in league. They compare it to the NBA. They talk about salary caps and all this stuff, and like we shouldn't touch that. I know that's a whole can of worms, but
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
All right, I think I'm all done here. I have everything.
Same here. Do you want to give any shout out to any of your social media that you would like people to follow you on, if anything?
Yeah, go ahead, follow my Twitter and follow my Instagram. It should be somewhere down here, or somewhere down here,
Yeah, I
or
think.
somewhere down here.
Yeah, same here. I want to give a quick shout out to our producer Eric. He's the one kind of helping us with like the recording and the overlays and the graphic design. So huge shout out to him. Thank you. And you can follow me. I think my Twitter should be somewhere here. But if you listen to an audio only version, it's gonna be called "Please Call Me Robbie," which is spelled PLSCALLIMROBBY. Once again, my name is Roberto, and my co-host's name is Carlos. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys can tune again in the future. Feel free to give us any feedback. We have a lot of episodes planned for you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Stay safe, guys.